What's up, Vector family? It's Luke Leasing here again with a good friend and trader of ours, Daniel. Daniel, how are you today?
How about yourself?
I'm well, thank you. We just had a great conversation off camera talking about the things that you have in the works, the stuff that we have in the works. So, definitely excited. But before we get into the good stuff about this interview, why don't you tell our listeners kind of like your background? Because we were just talking off camera about how you do have a little bit of a background in finance, in tech. Can you give
Yeah,
us a little bit of an idea in terms of your background?
sure. I mean, pretty diverse background, going back at this point almost 20 years, which is scary. I started off with like a financial software company, about 20 years ago, operated it, about 10 years with some partners. We sold it out around 2012, provided financial data and content. And like I started trading in the background, at that point. I mean, really. And again, that was a bit of a rough period because that was the 2008 to 2010 market crash. So, I've lived through that, experienced that. Then we sold out the software business, or I sold out my stake rather. And I ended up in like a wine importing restaurant business, world for about, 8 to 10 years. Uh, Successful until about COVID. COVID, wiped me out, wore me out. And, I decided to get out of that line of work at that point and started pursuing again more independent investing, mainly with crypto at that point, going back to 2018 to 2020. And as time went on, I've been looking for programs like like this one, like Vector, that provide some kind of structured trading, opportunities, and whatnot, and allow you to be independent, be an entrepreneur, and build something up that you can scale over time.
Got it. And you said something about trading. I don't think I've asked you this, but do you have manual trading experience? I know you mentioned between that '08 to 2010 period you were trading. Was that
I
manual trading?
I was doing manual trading of equities, like just say like U.S. stocks. I mean, like swing trading. Uh, more buy and hold at that point. But I was doing manual trading of stocks. Did some manual trading of crypto. I was never too thrilled manual trading. I mean, it's not something I really enjoyed. I did it. I was somewhat successful at it, but I prefer algorithms, which is why, I started first looking into Forex algorithms, did those successfully, and then I found you guys, and, this is where we are right now.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we were just talking off camera about some of your earnings. You mentioned that between a couple of your funded accounts that you're up about 8,000 in profit, right? 8 to
Right.
9,000 in net profit. And one thing that you said um, stood out to me. You said that you wish you were a bit more aggressive with evaluation accounts. Can you talk more about your trading strategy in our program using our algorithms?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's like early on, like I joined you guys around the beginning of the year, took advantage of one of the Apex sales when I think they had a 90% off, and I did purchase at that point 40 accounts, and we set up most of them to just run, the beat full strategy to get to the point, to pass the valuation stage to become PAs. I did, take a bunch of those, and I did the CLGC night strategies, which are the aggressive, strategies to get your PAs, in one shot. That and you guys say it's usually around like a 50-50, odds on those. So I do wish that going back, I took, those 40, me and about 50 accounts, and rather than, stretched out over a few months trying to get PAs, at my initial time with you guys the first month, I really focused just on getting the PAs, because it's when you look at it, even though look, you spend a little more money up front buying these Apex accounts, and when they're on sale, it's really not a whole lot more money. But it seems like, or I believe that I would have really accelerated my success in the program had I done that versus try to do it the conservative way of not losing accounts, getting emotionally attached to buying more accounts. So that's my advice to newcomers. Just try to get those PAs as aggressively as possible in your first month and a half.
Okay, got it. And you also mentioned that you do have experience with other trading algo companies.
Mhm.
Just by being at Vector for the last few months now, what would you say is something that you think that we do that maybe might stand out compared to other algo companies? Like, is there something in particular that you would say that you were more pleasantly surprised with when you started working with Vector?
I mean, I like the customer service for sure. That's I always tell people that's the number one, and I did actually refer you guys to one more person, my friend Tony, that you know about. He came on board, so and that was the main reason because he's more of a novice to all this, and so he was asking about other programs I was involved with, and I was telling him, I said, look, I said, you can try some of the other ones. Maybe they're a little more aggressive, but they're technical and there's not much assistance for you. And I said, Tony, so you're gonna be calling me every night about this. I love you, but I can't help you, like this. But so the Vector guys really have great, fantastic support, even if you're a novice, which you can attest to too. And that stands out to me tremendously. And I value that, very highly. You guys are, responsive in Discord and whatnot. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, well, actually, I appreciate you mentioning that because we take a lot of pride in that, right? Because to your point about being in the trading space and not getting maybe as much support from other companies, because we're in trading and it's generally known as a gray area, like in terms of the industry, because there's a lot of scams and frauds out there. We like to stand out in that manner because if we're the only ones taking the customer support aspect like very seriously, then obviously people like yourself will refer us business. And to us, that's the biggest compliment anyone can give us, right? Um, and one thing I'll say about you, Daniel, one thing that I think that you do very well is speaking to hundreds of traders every single day, whether it's in the voice channels, the group calls, the whatever it may be. One thing that you do very well is that you're very level-headed,
Have
very
to be.
level-headed. Very level-headed. I
Thank you.
guess just to close out the interview, with that being said, maybe you might have some other piece of advice, but what's one piece of advice you would give to a new trader that wants to get started in trading?
I mean, you really have to, have your conviction, like your goal, your strategy, and stick to it. I mean, you're gonna lose every so often. You're not gonna always win, and sometimes those losses are bad. I've had bad losses. Recently I've had bad losses. This month I've had bad losses. But does it change? Am I gonna stop doing what I'm doing? No, I'm not. I mean, I do take a step back. I did, pause a couple of things I'm doing. Uh, for two reasons. A, sometimes that's psychology. You're better off taking one step back personally, I think, and second, it's like, all right, it's been a volatile month. So maybe you're better off just, saying, hey, let me just move to cash. Let me just wait, to ride the volatility out. But really, that's the big thing. Like, it's like you have a bad week, you really have to just pull yourself together and keep doing what you're doing. And Vector and a lot of other things. I mean, this is end of the day a game of numbers. So it's in that old saying. It's not it's time in the market, not timing the market. So that's what you're doing here. You had a bad week last week. This week's better. In 3-4 months, you're going to forget last week, and that's really how you have to view these kinds of things.
Yeah, very well said. That was a saying that my first ever mentor in real estate told me when I got started in my career when I was 18. He
Mhm.
told me that it's not like because we were dealing with like real estate investments, and he told me that it's not about timing the market, it's spending time in the market. So
Yeah.
I've always taken those philosophies that I learned in the real estate world into here. So I appreciate your time, Daniel. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.